these are these are things that do not happen every day to
Mm,
young women in the Bronx. So for me to have the experience that, it tells me that God is there. It tells me that what I am doing, I should continue doing this. It brings me happiness. And it tells me that New York City is the place to be.
Welcome to Career Cheat Code. In this podcast, you'll hear how everyday people impact the world through their careers. Learn about their journey, career hacks, and obstacles along the way. Whether you're already having the impact you want or are searching for it, this is the podcast for you. Paola,
Hello.
welcome to the show.
Thank you, Radhy.
I appreciate you taking the time to meet today. I know it'll be interesting because I know we had to reschedule because you were asked by the governor's office to come to a parade. And I'm like, all right, we can reschedule around the governor.
But most importantly, I have to go to the beach later today. So
I
I'm
love it.
planning to go to Far Rockaway and, have my last summer Sunday.
You deserve that. That's great. Okay, so let's dive right in. Let's tell the world what it is you do for a living.
Sure. So first, thank you so much for the invite. My job is probably not as exciting as yours. You get to help people give money and do this podcast. I mean, what a labor of love. This is amazing. I always like it when people have an opportunity to do something that they love for work and also have like their side project and
Yeah,
use their creativity. So kudos to you.
I appreciate
It's
it.
a lot of commitment.
Thank you. I will say you wouldn't be on the show if I didn't think your career was pretty interesting. So,
Thank you.
so there's that too. Yeah.
Thank you. So I have the honor of working for Catholic Charities of the Archdiocese of New York right now. And what I've been doing throughout my career in this past couple of years, I've been immersed in government relations, private corporate relationships, and program management and program development. So in this new role with Catholic Charities, I was brought on board to do a strategic program development, meaning that I get to work with our various divisions and with their leadership to pretty much identify what are the things that they want to improve moving forward. You know, that sometimes you have leaders that are, they're busy managing the everyday work and supervising staff, and they don't have a lot of time to necessarily reflect on where do they want to go for the next 3, 5 years. So I have the privilege of working with amazing leaders, people who have been, in their field for many, many years. I have the privilege of just like focusing on what are going to be the next steps and how they can, improve what they are already doing, which is a privileged position because not only I feel like I learn a lot, but I also feel like I am helping create a space to reflect. And as you know, in New York City, sometimes we don't have a lot of time to do that. We're always on the go. We're always busy planning to do something. But the time to just look at things with a focused lens doesn't happen very often.
Got it. Okay. So what does that mean when you walk in on, call it Monday, right? How do you prepare for the week? What do you do on kind of a day to day? Like, what are you thinking about for the week, and how do you actually get to work?
Good question. So my days are not always the same. I dread walking to an office and just like having to read a tons of emails and go from one meeting to the other meeting. That's not really who I am. I think that when we met, actually, when I was working at SBS, I had an opportunity where I had a job that allowed me to travel through through different boroughs throughout the week. And I really came to realize that I want to be in a situation where I have an opportunity to be in the office, but also spend time in the community. With this role, and I guess that the roles that I've had for the past 5 years or 5 to 7 years, every single day is different for me. I do plan how I want my week to look like, but I actually start to do that on Sunday. I am one of those guilties of, just like starting to work on Sunday at 5 p.m. I think that I developed that in my first job because I was a scheduler. and I had to call the member that I used to work with at 5 p.m. on Sunday to plan for the rest of the week. So
Oh, that
I
makes sense.
continue to do that. It's like a personal habit that I have. And then by the time I am in my office on Monday, it's people replying to my emails. I like to be the one that's like sending the email first thing
Got it.
early, so that people can respond to that, as opposed to me being on the other side of the equation where I'm just like replying to tons of emails. I don't like that. But to your question, I guess that the short answer would be I get there on Monday. I make sure that my role is to make sure that we accomplish our goals, right? And that we are on track. And when I do a strategic program development, what I do is to set goals with my team, to plan sessions and kind of like get them to commit to participating in these sessions. So a lot of my
Mm,
work is reminding people about our agreements and saying,
mm,
hey, it's Monday and we agreed that for the next 2 weeks, we are doing our sessions to review the goals for our programs and to engage other partners. So how much help do you need? How can I contribute? How can I help? I also have interns that work with me.
mm,
And that part is, I find it very exciting because interns always want to do a lot of things. They want to learn. They're eager to learn.
mm.
And I rely on them to do a lot of the things that will prepare me to execute well. So I manage my
Absolutely.
interns. We check in early in the morning and just distribute the tasks that everyone has to do for the week. And
Mm.
then, for the rest of the week, it's fun. I also try to make time to have a quality time and enjoy lunch with my team and then go to the gym after work.
I love it. Okay. And you get to kind of spend some time outside of the office, right? Like you get to go to events and like you go to parades and other things as part of your role, right? So how do those kind of come about? Is that through some of the partnerships that you have on the ground? Is that you just being a good kind of steward of your organization and building the right relationships? Like how does that work?
I think it's a little bit of both. The work that we do happens in collaboration with other organizations. And I learned that if you want people to show up for you, you have to return the favor. So the programs that we have at Catholic Charities right now, I am working with the division that coordinates youth services, and we have multiple sites. We have high schools, we have elementary programs, we have cornerstones, which are community centers. So they're always doing something with the students, whether it is a trip to the Yankee Stadium or to the Met Stadium, or maybe they are doing a health fair in Washington Heights. So I love showing up during those events because that's when you have the opportunity to connect with the families and to connect with the program participants. And you also feed off of that energy. I want to see that the work that we are planning to do and executing has good results for the people that we serve. And then,
Mhm.
working in government, as you have to maintain your relationships. So I always love to show up to events that my friends or my colleagues in government have, and community events. I'm very involved in my community. I am a member of my community board. I participate with several organizations. And, I do it because I enjoy it, but it's also to be able to connect with people that are doing meaningful work on the ground so that we
Mm,
can collaborate.
I love it. Okay. Is the work that you do now what you always wanted to do for a living?
I would say yes. I remember when I was 8 years old, I would always pray and I would always say something like, I really want to help people and I really want to make sure that wherever I am, I can be, I can do something positive for the community, for the society. And that's exactly what I am doing today. And I have the pleasure of doing that with an organization that has been serving New Yorkers for over 100 years. And the executive director of the organization that I work with, Monsignor Kevin Sullivan, he's the to-go person for the city in so many different topics, like when it comes to refugees, immigrants, social services. He's a well-known leader, and I think that we both share the mindset of, if we can fix it. I think that something that I really admire in him is that he has a growth mindset. He firmly believes that people deserve to have a good life, right? And that
Mm,
government is is there to be an equalizer.
mm,
So, and I say that because I think that throughout my career, I've had the opportunity to work with amazing leaders, people who have become mentors. And it's so important to work with folks that you can respect and you can admire. It makes your work easier. And also when you feel that you are being supported. And I
mm.
definitely feel that. And I say that again because it's important. You can do great work, but if you are the only person, right, trying to do the best and you don't have the support, it's very frustrating.
Absolutely. Let's backtrack and let's talk a little bit about your upbringing. Where were you born, raised, school, all of those things?
So I was born and raised in the Dominican Republic. I actually immigrated to New York City back in 2009. I was the first time I came to New York, I was 19. So it was in 2006. I came to participate at a Model of the United Nations conference with a group of friends from high school and college. It was a beautiful experience. I think I was here for about a week. I realized very, very early that I did not want to work for the UN. I just feel like everything was so slow. It took me 3 days to figure that out. I did enjoy the experience. And surprisingly, I work not too far from the UN building. I am on the Upper East Side, not far from the UN building, actually, probably, I don't remember how many streets, but maybe like 15, 10 minutes. Actually, a 10 minutes walk from the building where I am now. And who
Mm,
would have thought in
mm,
2006? I had no idea that I would be immigrating to New York and that I would be graduating from college here and then
mm,
eventually establishing here. That was not my goal in life.
mm.
Although I always knew I wanted to help people and I wanted to work with people from all over the world. I guess that everything everything aligned because
Absolutely.
New York City is definitely the place where you can change things, work with
Mhm.
people from all over the world and just experiment new things.
So you came here for a program to do a Model UN. How long was that stay? And was that part of what, high school, college? What were you doing out there?
So it was, we were here for about a week. And through a foundation in the Dominican Republic, an organization actually called Funglode, that organization was founded by former President Leonel Fernandez. And I was in high school. When I graduated high school, they invited me to participate. So I was part of the college cohort. But I received the invitation through my high school. I was always very active doing stuff or organizing things in
Mm.
my high school. So we were here for a week. It took me 3 years to actually moving in New York permanently. But that was my first experience with like international affairs, which I was always very interested in.
Okay. So let's talk about those 3 years, right? Like, what in your mind made you decide that you wanted to come to the United States? And did you already have family here? Like, how did like, that's a pretty bold move, right? To up and leave your country and say, let me go try to figure things out somewhere else where you know the language, but it's not your first language. It's not what you speak with your friends all the time. So, there's going to be some barrier when you arrive. So how did you arrive at that decision?
Definitely a complete change, right? And very unexpected. And I would say that I was unprepared for everything that I found once I settled in New York City. But once I was in the art. I was going to college. I enrolled in La Universidad Autónoma de Santo Domingo, which is it's actually the first college in the American continent.
Hmm.
The Autonomous University of Santo Domingo it's a public institution. You do not have to pay a lot of money to pursue a career there. And I have cousins that graduated with their degrees in architecture and medicine. That's a popular one. It's
Hmm.
if you want to become a doctor, a doctor in medicine, pursuing your degree at that university might take a while, but it's gonna be very affordable and rewarding.
Hmm.
I never wanted to study medicine. I didn't know, like, the path for me was not very clear. I loved communications, public relations, so I tried that. Then I realized that if I stayed at that public college, it was gonna take me a while to graduate because they're always doing protests and things like that. So
Hmm.
I enrolled in a PEC, which is a smaller private university, falls in line with Baruch College. They offer the same majors. And I was trying to do marketing and information sciences, but I felt like I still felt that something was missing. Nonetheless, I completed 2 years of college. They offered me a scholarship and I was teaching English there. And then an opportunity came for me to work for a hotel. They also had a strong program in hospitality. And I remember my mom always saying, you should study hospitality. You love languages, you love meeting people. Why don't you try that? So when they offered me this job, I was like, you know what? Let me give it a try. And I had to move from Santo Domingo to the East Coast in the country. So I moved to Punta Cana, Bávaro Punta Cana, for a few months. And we were tasked with opening a new hotel. Like, when I'm telling you we were opening a new hotel, it means that I was the person who did the first check-in, the first customer that checked in
Wow.
at the hotel. I did that. And we even had to prepare the beds
Hmm.
to support the housekeeping team. And it was like a really cool experience. And when I moved to the east side, to Punta Cana, it was also interesting because then I met people from like Germany, Russia, Mexico, people from all over the world. And I was like, hey, there's all of these people that they come to the Dominican Republic to look for a better future, right?
Hmm.
To them, our country represents another opportunity, a new opportunity, and the opportunity to have an income that they wouldn't have the opportunity to get in their own countries.
Wow.
So I saw Dominican Republic through a different lens. At the time, there was a lot of immigrants from Eastern Europe coming to live in the Dominican Republic. And I've always loved languages. I speak French and I speak a little bit of Italian. So I was like, "Oh, maybe I should learn another language." But something that I also realized is that people, Dominicans working in the island, not necessarily get the best deals, right? When you are working for a foreign hotel chain, I realized that, a lot of people from the Dominican Republic, they didn't necessarily have the best training.
Hmm.
So the hotels had to bring people from Mexico or Europe to take over the managerial jobs, like the upper management jobs. And I was like, you know what? I know part of it is the lack of access to quality education. I was fortunate that I was in college and I had a good professional experience. So I felt comfortable, but I also realized that to move up in that field, it required you to just like devote all your time
Hmm.
to working in the hospitality. It's not an easy field to work in. You have to put in the hours, very
Yep.
long hours. And I remember my work days sometimes were very long
Hmm.
and it paid off. I think I got like an award
Of course you did.
just in the first few months, or 8 months of working there.
Hmm.
And it was an honor because I was working with people that they didn't know anything besides working in the hospitality industry. But then I was like, you know what happens when the season is over? What happens when we get a lot of tourists from Europe and the United States, and you have the high season and you have the low season. Hotels have to lay off a lot of workers,
Oh, interesting.
right?
Mm.
And I was like, it shouldn't be like that. I think
Mm.
workers should be more protected
Okay.
throughout the time when they are laid off. And it started to bother me. So I know that if I had stayed, I would have initiated probably like a workers movement or something.
Oh, I could see that. I could totally see you starting a whole union over there.
Yes. But then I was dating at the time. I was dating my son's dad, and it was time to pack up my bags and come to New York. And I was
Hmm.
like, I didn't know much. I have to be honest with you. I didn't know much about government here, or so I when I came, I tried to find a job in a hotel,
Hmm.
right? And it didn't pan out. I was like, I sent my resumes and no one called me.
Hmm. And your son's dad was in the United States or in the Dominican
Yes,
Republic? Okay.
here.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
he's
you had a
Dominican, but he was living here.
got it. So you had like a long distance relationship for a little bit, and then you decided, you know what, let me just go over there and we'll make it work together over there.
Exactly.
Got it. That makes sense. So there was a boy in the story. That makes sense. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, it could
Okay.
have been a boy. It could have been, that immigrants from the Dominican Republic, we always have a primo somewhere.
That's true.
Siempre hay un primo.
That's true.
I it's interesting because now I'm studying the Bible a lot and learning more and understanding more about immigrants, right? And if you look in the history of times, people move from one place to the other. It's in the Bible, like God moves his people, right? And gives them new land where they are meant to flourish, to work hard for the first 100 years, and then they receive these blessings and all of these. I was too young at the time to understand what to be an immigrant was.
Hmm.
But I was full of hopes. I was like, if I have all of these opportunities here in the Dominican Republic, imagine if I go to New York,
Hmm. That makes
right?
sense. Yeah.
This is the promised land.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to be in New York. So I was like, let me try it. And then when you go to sign up for college, you're like, boom, if you don't have $10,000, you're not going to college. And then I
Mm-hmm.
was like, why did I, why didn't I capitalize on that scholarship that I had there? Like,
Mm.
I could have gone to college for free, but it
Right.
was too late. I was like, I'm here. I have to figure this out. So
Mm.
when I came, I didn't get a job with in the hospitality. And I was like, you know what? Let me go to this store that I really love. Let me go to Zara
Okay.
and let me try to find a job. And I found this Dominican guy and a Dominican manager, and they gave me the opportunity. I told them about my
Mm.
experience, customer service, this and that. And they're like, okay. So they gave me a job. Never again do I want to work in retail.
Mm.
It's tough. So kudos to people who do that. Retail is, I
Tougher
think,
for you than hospitality?
yes,
Okay.
really tough.
Okay. Why?
Really tough. But I worked there for like 6 months and I was able to save enough money to pay for my semester at Baruch. I was exploring like, okay, where do I finish this degree now? And I went to a tour at NYU. They would email me a lot of their marketing materials. And when
Mm.
I went to the tour and they started to tell me that I needed to take the TOEFL exam, and when they told me about their tuition, I went on the tour. And as soon as we walked into the library, beautiful library, I walked away. I was like, there's no way I am going to be able to afford this college. And there's no way I am going to get in debt
Mm.
for this college degree.
Okay.
So I was like, I'm going to stick to CUNY.
Okay.
And since I was doing marketing in DR, I enrolled at Baruch College because they have a good marketing and communications program.
Mm-hmm.
And later on, it didn't take me too long to fall in love with the city, and I guess that I fell in love with New York City has something very interesting, which is like you can try anything here. This is the city where people want to try new experiments because if it works in New York City, it
Mm.
can work anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Here is more challenging. So you want to try it here. You want to try your new ideas here. And I saw that immediately. I was introduced to a good friend. She was doing a lot of community organizing, and we had numerous conversations. And then I learned about public affairs, public policy. And I think that that was the piece that was missing in my puzzle. Like I always wanted to work towards social change, but I didn't know what policy was. Right. And going back to that model of the UN, what we used to do was to come up with ideas to think about how we can improve access to water. Right. So that was like policy, small policy steps. And then I was like, hey, but I can study this. I can make a career of this. And Baruch College has a good public affairs and public policy program.
Absolutely.
So I started there. I met a professor, and he was just amazing. Professor John Robertson. He had a PhD in social work, and he saw my passion, right? So he gave me the opportunity to write about the things I wanted to write about. And at the time, in the Dominican Republic, they were advocating for access to quality education. They wanted to increase the budget for public education. And I reached out to my friends there, and I was like, how can I help? I am here in New York. There's a lot of Dominicans here. How can I help? So I started to mobilize people around the issue. And we did rallies in Washington Heights. We did a concert at Lehman College. And we invited like over 20 groups that performed for free. We created a movement here to support people in the art. And that really gave me a lot of hope and allowed me to see that how important are Dominicans in the diaspora. So I started to meet all of these wonderful people doing work with Dominicans and for for Latinos. And then I started to learn about fellowships. I got a fellowship with the Dominican American National Roundtable, and met other Dominicans who were doing good things. And once you learn those words, internships, fellowships, scholarships, I was like, I'm smart. I can get a fellowship. I can get someone to pay for my college degree.
Absolutely.
So I just started to write my essays, and I learned about a fellowship at City College with their School of Public Service. And I went there, and I asked. They told me that it was a training in public policy. And I was like, wow, great. And I didn't know that they provided a stipend. So I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. This is what I need. So I applied and I got in. And that's
awesome.
how I was able to complete my college degree with the support that City College offered me. You are in philanthropy, right?
That's correct.
So your work is to make sure that people also, to foster that philanthropic mindset. My dream is that I become wealthy enough so that later on I can give back to City College, because they definitely helped me when I needed it the most.
That's awesome. And I think you can definitely do that even before you utilize your own funds, just by working at different organizations that can support educational institutions like that and programs like that. And it's fascinating, right? Because your college career started in another country. Like you were enrolled, and did you get a degree in Dominican Republic as well?
No.
Okay. So you started your journey there, then you came here, started working, saved up, started school, continue to like do more research and figure out how am I going to pay for this, right? Because I think it's expensive. And then you got a fellowship to actually cover your education. And like, this is a bunch of years in the making. And I love that story, right? Because I think it's pretty easy to look at someone like yourself and say, you're so accomplished, you're so remarkable in your career, and, have owned your career. But there were, moments where you had to really work through a lot of things and figure that out, and, have the courage to move to another country, right? To say, you know what, I'm doing okay here, and I have a track right now where I have a job, I can continue to go to school here. Well, let me just go to this other country and try to figure this out. That's huge, right? Like, I think you speak about it with such certainty that I think some of the courage is not highlighted. And I think it's just it's remarkable to me because I always look at, I was born in the Dominican Republic too, but I came here with my mom, right? So it was my mom's decision. It wasn't mine. So it was her courage and her foresight to say, we can make it in another country. We can make this happen over there. You did that. And like, I just think that's remarkable because, that also speaks to not only you mentioned the diaspora earlier, but also just the immigrant story being layered and being so different, right? Like you and I are immigrants, but our stories are much different, right? And like I was here since I was 7. You came here as an adult making a rational decision to say, I'm going to go and make it. And here we are, right? Fast forward a couple of years later. So tell me what happens when you're in college and you're about to graduate. What is your major? What are you thinking you're going to do after college? And what actually happens?
So I majored in political science and Romance languages. And I was in a very competitive program in college, right? And like you said, I think that reality hits like when you see the stories of the people that surround you and you see the support that they have, like they have their families here. You kind of start to feel like alone sometimes, right? I think that when I was going to college, definitely I was enjoying every single day of it, but it was also a lot of pressure because I think that I not having the support network at the time or not feeling that I could take a break. I didn't think I was able. I was very focused on completing that college degree and doing anything it would take to just like accomplish that goal, and it was a lot of effort. So thank you for acknowledging that, and it reminds me that it wasn't an easy decision to make, but once I committed to my choice, you don't have any option but to dream big, especially when you are a public servant at heart, right? You are too worried thinking about how to fix problems in the world, right? That's what you do when you're a political science major and you like public policy. You're thinking about how can we improve education for everyone? How can we improve the immigration system? When I got here, I was very involved with the immigrants' rights movement. We were advocating for an immigration reform that we are still advocating for, 10, 13 years later. And that was an important part of my journey through college. I went to college and I got involved with the Roosevelt Institute network. We did a lot of work towards education, and I did internships with labor unions, and I was able to travel to Ohio, to Texas, and to LA to work with other with undocumented immigrant youth. And I think that broadened my perspective about what being an immigrant means. Like you said, everyone has a different story, right? You and I had documents to come here. There's a lot of people who come here and unfortunately they don't have documents, but they have dreams and they have goals and they have aspirations. So my dream, actually, it took me a little bit to figure out the next step. I was offered to work with Teach for America. And I thought that I really wanted to be in the classroom. I thought that I wanted to be a teacher because you needed that practical experience. I needed that practical experience if I wanted to continue working on education policy. But then I spoke with my mentor, the professor from Baruch that I mentioned, and he told me, well, if what you want to do is policy, you don't have to go to TFA. Go to the city council. If they're offering you a job to work for the city council, take it. And the pay was, significantly less, but I followed his advice. So I got offered a couple of jobs, one to work with a representative in the Bronx, another one to work with a representative in Brooklyn. And the time aligned, and I was able to work in Brooklyn for the city council. 3 days in the district office and 2 days at the city council office here downtown by City Hall.
Okay.
And yeah.
what council member's office or how?
Council member Williams, Jumani Williams. He's now the public advocate.
Okay.
Yes. The other person who reached out was Richie Torres. That was his first term.
Oh, that's
And,
great.
Yeah.
You would have been in great hands either way. So it sounds like
Either way, yeah.
absolutely.
And I am glad that I continue to follow, their journeys. To this day, we are good friends. And they're doing amazing things. So, but I was also even more excited to join the council at a time where there was a lot of, young people, right? Now the council is different, and I think it's even more exciting. There's over 25, I think 36 women in the council.
Yep.
And all of that started back in 2016. 2014, 2016, it was intentional, right? To make sure that by 2021, there were more women in the council. And I really think it will pay off big dividends to have more women in leadership roles.
Completely agree. So tell me about your actual role while you were there. It sounds like, it was a really transformative and eye-opening experience and directly aligned with a lot of your government inclinations, right? Did you get what you wanted out of that role, and what were you actually doing?
So my role was a scheduler and office manager. So it's an entry-level position, but what being a scheduler allows you is that you are the person who tasked with making sure that whatever the member wants to do happens, right? If they want to meet with legislator to work on a particular idea, you have to make sure that that meeting happens, that the meetings with the labor unions happen, and that the meetings with the advocates happen, right? From the time that they are going to conceive the idea to the time that they are going to work on the idea, right? So I took it very seriously, and it helped me that I had experience in community organizing, that I had already engaged with a lot of advocacy groups in New York City. So I knew their mission, I knew what they were about, and I knew their leaders. So that was very helpful. I think that looking back, something that I would have appreciated more, I think that when you are working in a fast-paced environment such as the council, you don't have a lot of time for many things. You have to think quickly, right? There's always something that needs to get done. And you're working with elected officials. They always are thinking about what's next, right? But I did the most out of it. I met phenomenal people, and we were able to do community events. We were able to do so much. I was working for one of the most productive members at the council at the time. So, I wish I had been able to just meditate more on that moment and the importance of that moment, but it didn't take too much time for me to be called on to another project. So after that I joined a couple of city agencies. I went to work for the Commission on Human Rights at a time when they were expanding protections under the human rights laws in New York City. And then I went to work for the Department of Small Business Services when they were looking to expand outreach and services for small business owners throughout the city.
It's interesting, right? Because you have this theme of working for people, for community, starting with immigrants, but kind of broadening to okay, what is happening at the council level? That means literally all New Yorkers within the district, right? Then and beyond, right? Because this person is potentially going to pass legislation that impacts all New Yorkers. And then going to different agencies and, Commission on Human Rights, that sounds very much aligned with everything I hear from you. And now you're talking about small business services, right? This is a different lens to look at helping people, right? But it is a way of doing that and of capitalizing on your outreach, on your personable skills, on your commitment to being in community. So can you talk a little bit about that role? That's when I met you. Yes. For those that don't know, when I was at the New York City Economic Development Corporation, we are in the same building and are basically tied via contract as to agencies. So Yeah, tell me a little bit about your experience there and kind of what you took away from that experience, because it was a shift in the way that you've
Yes.
been helping people.
Yeah, it was a shift and it was very intentional. I think that, you are more well-rounded as a professional when you diversify your skills and when you give yourself the opportunity to try new things. And having worked in the private sector in the R, I knew that I had the skills to think about, how private businesses, how private entities think and how they can collaborate to create to create an environment to spur economic growth, right? But I was lucky and I was glad that I was able to do that through a lens of equity. And the program that I was developing, allowed me to do just that. So I was able to work with immigrant communities and introduce them to these services that this city agency has. And I met wonderful people. I think that the beauty of New York City is that people have a chance, as I said before, to try new things, right? To try new ideas. And I met phenomenal business owners who were doing, one of them was bringing hair from India, right? She became a millionaire selling hair extensions that she would purchase in India and would help other women who wanted to create their own businesses in the beauty industry. I was able to meet business owners from the Little Italy on Arthur Avenue in the Bronx, and people from Queens. Working with the chambers of commerce was also very enlightening for me. And I created my strategies around, how can we make sure that the small businesses who traditionally lack access to these services, whether because there are language barriers, whether because there is mistrust of government, or they simply don't know that government can help, right? So I created a strategy around identifying sectors that were growing and visiting business corridors that, they know about fines and government regulations, but they don't always think that government can come and be an ally and be a partner.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a lot of, historic mistrust or just, as you said, not knowing information, right? Like that is why you're out there, and that's why you're bringing these resources, which is really important and can help people thrive, right? Like that business owner that you mentioned that became a millionaire, I'm sure they would have probably figured it out and done all those steps on their own. It is helpful to have government agencies that are dedicated to supporting you be there through that process and kind of help you accelerate some of that growth and do things in a way that support your business, right? And like these resources are there. It's just a matter of getting it to people's hands.
Another thing that I was intentional, I was always doing civil rights. But why do people come to the US? People come to the US because they understand that through their hard work, they can accomplish a better life for themselves and for their family. And knowing that I am also an immigrant, right, I felt compelled to think about the future, right? If I want to help people, I need to start learning about how I can invest, right? And I wanted to be in an environment where I was engaging with other business owners and entrepreneurs and learn from them. So I started to taking all of this knowledge. And I remember we were at a conference and one of the participants mentioned how important it was to create multiple sources of revenue, right? And she said that the magic number is 6. I'm not sure if that's true. But I was like, if I can have another source of revenue in addition to my job, and I had worked with people like that in the past in the Dominican Republic. I had worked with small business owners, and I started to think about, how can we develop a money and growth mindset, right? Especially for people like me who are passionate about public service. how can we also think about helping the communities that we live in? And how can we make sure that we can sustain ourselves and provide for our generations to come? I have a son, so I use that opportunity to just engage with people that wanted to talk about money, right? And I you know, I hope, and I'm assuming that you are having conversations about money very often,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I learned to love these conversations as well. Like, how can we create things? How can we love, you know, how can we create a mindset where we know that money loves me and I love money?
Absolutely. So two quick follow-ups there. One, how old is your son now? And two, tell me about anything that you have started since that is either producing another source of income and or providing an outlet creatively for you.
My son is 13 years old. He's a young boy. He's phenomenal. He's learning how to cook now. He keeps saying that he wants to be a chef. So I don't know if that's going to be the case, but all I can do right now is to support him. So, I got him the tools so he can cook. I let him use the kitchen all the time. And sometimes I'm like, I'm not going to look over there. Just do your thing.
I hear you.
But it's fun because now he's like preparing dinner and breakfast for me. So, I love it.
That's a great age. I have my son is about to turn 17 in like 3 weeks.
Oh,
so
that's so nice.
That's a great age right there.
He's going to college
very soon. Yeah, very soon. Not yet. So he's junior now. So
okay.
we have some time. But we'll see. We'll see how that process. In
4 more years, my brother is going to college.
That's great.
Unbelievable. Yeah. So what am I doing? When I was at SBS, I'm telling you, I was in this mindset and I started to invest in properties. So I went back. Remember, I was working in Punta Cana. So I always wanted to have a house near the beach. And I went back to that. So I went on a small trip, and I was walking. And then I saw this place. It was like on sale and they had an open house. So I just walked in and I saw this beautiful apartment and I fell in love with it. Right. So I immediately made a reservation for one of the units. That particular one, it didn't pan out at the end because there were some issues. But luckily I had invested in other properties. So something that I have been developing for myself and for my family, and I have helped other people who want to invest. I've been investing in real estate. So I started in the Dominican Republic. The Dominican Republic is a wonderful place to invest right now. It's 3 hours away, 3 hours and a half away by plane from the United States. The economy is thriving, and, we are doing well in the hospitality industry. So that's where I started, and I fell in love with real estate and the value of investing in real estate, right? You want your money to work for you.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I have been learning. You asked me about my favorite books, and I cannot wait to share.
Before that, there is another creative outlet that you also have. Aside from real estate, that is another source of income. You also have another creative outlet that I would love for you to also share.
Are you talking about my music and my singing and dancing?
I am talking about that.
Yeah. So, more real estate. Yeah, that's what I am doing. I cannot wait to get my hands on my first investment properties here in the US. So that's what I am preparing myself for right now. And then in my free time, I love music, right? I love to create and I love to perform. What I do on my free time, because trust me, I do find a little bit of time for free time. Before the pandemic, I auditioned to Juilliard. I always wanted to study music. I just didn't know that it could be a career, unfortunately, right? Like growing up, I didn't know that people could go to college and study music. I know you could go to a conservatory, which I try to do early, but you need a preparation before to go to a conservatory. So we had to like postpone that. But I went to Juilliard and I've been I've been taking music lessons there ever since. So
Mm.
I sing. Lately, I've been commissioned to sing the national anthems very often.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, just last week I was at a cultural event in Nassau County, but it's something that I do for fun. Music is also a very lucrative industry. So what I've been trying to do, I've been writing more often, and that's something that I really want to explore and collaborate with other people. Again, I'm not doing it for the money, but it can be very lucrative.
Okay, that's great. So you have you're up to 3 sources of income at least now. All right, so
Yes,
you're
right.
working through it.
And the goal is 6.
Yeah,
So we'll
absolutely.
figure it out.
You mentioned some books, so we would love to hear some of the books that you feel like have helped you personally or professionally.
Yeah, so I am actually going to share some of the stuff. You mentioned that, so I was like, oh my God, yeah, I love when people talk about sharing information about books because conversations can be very enlightening, but the time that you spend to reflect on your own, right, and to learn new perspectives from different people can also be very rewarding. I mentioned to you that the executive director of Catholic Charities, Kevin Sullivan, is someone that I really admire. He actually wrote a book, and the name of the book is "What's the Message? Bible Basics for Busy People." And this is someone that the Bible is probably his favorite book. He loves the Bible, so he has spent many years studying the Bible and its teaching. And I find it quite interesting because growing up, I went to Catholic school and we studied the Bible, but I never had someone to explain the Bible to me. And I just feel like
Mm.
that's what I am getting from this book. And ever since I've been reading this book, I am like, oh my God, I can do it all. I am so motivated. I want to do this. I want to do that. And I feel like it's messing up my head because now I feel like nothing is impossible.
That's great. Okay.
Yeah, another book that I am actually very intrigued by is about investments and cities. So this one is called Free Private Cities by Titus, or I don't know how you pronounce that name, is Titus, Titus Gebel. Free Private Cities, making governments compete for you. So I am looking at books about investments, how to make good investments. But I am also looking at other perspectives about how people are creating change in cities, how private investors, government, philanthropy are coming together to
Mm.
improve society.
Got it. That's great. Okay. I'm a very big fan of you don't have to sacrifice your personal career and your personal finances and family finances for the sake of impact. I think you can have a merger of both, especially once you start talking about having additional sources of income and outlets for your passions. Would be helpful to hear a range of how much money people can make in this type of career that you have.
Great. So I, like you, I think that, you know, we're young, we have families, and we live in New York, right? The most expensive city in the world. I think I was chatting with someone and it used to be San Francisco, but it's not San Francisco anymore. The most expensive city is New York. And, I grew up in a Latino household. We earn our money, right? We're not here to take a handout.
Absolutely.
You have to earn it. And I feel like I'm a very faithful person. I am a daughter of God, and God has given me infinite skills, right? Like you just have to dig deeper and think about what is it that you do and what is it that you can do well and make a living with that. So when every time I took on a job, I was never guided by the amount of money that I would make. In fact, I would turn down opportunities that would pay relatively well over opportunities that allow me to have more impact and did not necessarily pay the most at the time. But I knew that I was going to be able to learn and develop skills that would allow me to grow, right? That's how I've made every decision in my career. That's also what motivated me to join SBS, because I had been doing community organizing. Now I had the opportunity to do program management, to work in economic development, right? So I knew that that could translate to other opportunities. Last year or 2 years ago, I made the decision to move to Albany, right? You know, Albany, you can live with less money in Albany, right? So I joined the State University of New York, and I was doing government affairs, living in Albany, where I can tell you, to be honest with you, Radhy, I could go a week without spending $1. If I wanted to grab a coffee, I would spend like $5, and that was all. I was cooking at home, every meal at home. So, and then I was commuting to New York City on the weekends. And whenever I came to New York City, I would have to spend $300.
Wow.
Right. So coming back to New York City and making the decision to come back, I was like, I need a job that really allows me to live here and to save, because I'm telling you, I'm saving to buy, to invest. And I would tell something I could tell to people: figure out what is it that you need to leave, right? Once you figure out what are your non-negotiables, what are the things that you need to leave, it's like a relationship. If you know that you're comfortable living in an apartment, that you want to travel at least twice a year, and that you like to go to the gym, for example, something that it's a gift to myself, I give myself the gift of a good membership to a gym. That is a gift. That brings me mental clarity, and I do it for my mental health. So I invest in a good gym membership. Everything else I can negotiate. Like, now I do not have a car. So that is an expense that I don't have to worry about. I don't have a car. I can take public transportation. Some people would not feel comfortable if they don't have a car.
Absolutely.
Right. So I kind of figured out what is it that I need to live in the city. And from there, I started to, one, get the training I needed to get the job that would put me there. So I invested in my master's degree. I went to Hunter College and I did my master's in urban policy and leadership. It cost me $20,000, right? I chose CUNY because it's affordable. A lot of people go to NYU and they are intentional about that. They're like, if I go to NYU, I can work with these firms. I've never had that problem. I chose CUNY and I had private jobs, government jobs. It's all about, your skills and the people you know too, and how well you do your job. I say this because if you know that your lifestyle, the lifestyle that you want to have, you cannot live that lifestyle with $80,000, then you have to make investments in your education, right?
Makes sense.
So the lifestyle that I want to have, I am all about community, right? So I did my master's degree because I knew that would put me in an earning bracket above $80,000, right? And I was like, I remember having these conversations with Janet at SBS, and we were like,
"Are you talking about the first episode ever of this show, Janet? Is that who you're talking about, Janet Peguero?"
Yes. And we were like, okay, so we always had conversations about money too. And there was a point when we realized that you cannot live in New York City. Unfortunately, it's difficult to live if you're making below $80,000, right? And we were both in positions where we were doing amazing work. I think that it hit me. I was like, I'm working for 4 people right now, but because I don't have a master's degree, I'm not being compensated the way I should be. So I went to Hunter, got my master's degree, and it opened up so many doors for me. I had people calling me to offer jobs at the time for $110,000. But the mission of the organization didn't necessarily align with my mission. So I took a job that was offering me $87,000, but the mission was aligned with my values.
That's real.
Right. And after that, I always go by that. It's not just the job, it's the values. And now after the pandemic, we realized that we really want to be in jobs that allow us to have flexibility to spend more time with our families, with our pets. Now people are looking to be remote at least once a day, once a week,
Absolutely.
or maybe 2 times a week, just for mental health, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
All of those things, I also factor them into my earnings. I consider that support and that flexibility as part of my earnings. So right now it's difficult for me to tell you, like, I have to factor it into my salary. But if you want to know, and I'm open and honest about it, because I like people. I have mentees. I mentor a lot of young women that are in their college journey right now, and I encourage them to think about the skills that they need to develop to reach the salaries that they want. And
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you right now, my salary is above 800,000. I think that to live in New York City, you need that. You need to be between 120, 125 and above, because
Mm-hmm.
it is a very expensive place to be. But it allows you to develop the skills and to build the network
Mm.
that is going to propel you in that direction, if that's what you want. And if you cannot if one job is not going to give you the lifestyle that you want, you can always do something extra.
Absolutely. I love that. You're like very strategic with your career, with your income, with your passion, with even just, again, having the foresight to say, let me move to Albany for a while and try this job out. You try for a while. If it doesn't work, then you come back. At the very least, you're able to save money while you're up there, and you get to experience different things. And then you come back. I mean, you've already done it from one country to another. So like 2 cities within the same state, that's a piece of cake for
Yes.
you, right? So
It feels like 2 different countries, I have to say.
that's fair. Is there anything else we haven't covered that the world should know about Paola?
Oh my God. I think we cover a lot of ground. I think that, I just want to share with people that something I've learned. Whatever we do, it has to bring us joy. People will feel inspired by that. If you are doing something, it's not just about the money. It's the rewarding that we get from helping people. I say that my job allows me to help communities, but it also allows me to help people make their dreams come through. The past couple of weeks, I had an amazing experience. I have a mentee that I met when I was working in social services at the Betances houses, my first job with Catholic Charities. And she is this young, phenomenal, beautiful woman. She wanted to be a model. She wanted to be in the wrong way. And I met her for the past 5 years. I've coached her. I've seen her grow. And God is so good, Radhy, that 2 weeks ago, we had the opportunity to interview with the president of a very prestigious model agency in New York, and they signed her. So she's getting ready to participate in New York Fashion Week.
Mm.
It's a dream come true for a girl growing up in the South Bronx. Her mom is undocumented from the Dominican Republic. These are things that do not happen every day to young women in the Bronx. So for me to have experience that, it tells me that God is there. It tells me that what I am doing, I should continue doing this. It brings me happiness. And it tells me that New York City is the place to be.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I love that. Okay. Thank you for joining us today. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did and believe on the mission we're on, please like, rate, and subscribe to this podcast on whatever platform you're using, and share this podcast with your friends in your networks. Make sure you follow us on Instagram and LinkedIn at Career Cheat Code, and tell us people or careers you would like to see highlighted. See you next week with some more cheat codes. Peace.